I just found my ex-wife is feeding my kids turpentine. I found this out, like I do most things about life with their mother, through the kids, 7 male and 5 female, as communication has been pretty much non-existent between the ex and I since our split 6 years ago. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, no, I don't ever press my kids for information. I've worked very hard to establish an uninhibited, open, no topic is off-limits type of relationship with my kids. Even though I've only got them every other weekend, I want them to feel comfortable enough to fully express themselves and speak their mind freely around me. This has led to several discoveries about certain aspects of their life that their mother has asked them not to reveal to me, something I am very much against. I don't believe any child should have to hold secrets between their parents. It isn't their responsibility and is something I would never ask of them. That being said, they've come out with nuggets of wisdom, such as we shouldn't be drinking tap water because the government puts chemicals in there that makes us docile and obedient. Santa isn't real, but Jesus is, and the Bible is 100% fact, controversial topic, I understand. And most recently that the government says turpentine is poisonous, but it is actually good for you. What the hell do I do here? If I speak to my ex about this, or even let slip that I know it's going on, she isn't going to have an honest conversation about it with me, and I fear that she'll just press the kids even harder to keep things from me. I don't want their heads filled with this rubbish, but I feel so powerless to stop this. All I can do is try to teach them to think critically, but that is only going to be so effective when they're getting told all this nonsense is fact. Help. I spoke to my children about it and recorded the conversation to ensure there was no confusion about what was being said. They were being fed a spoonful of turpentine every day by their Nana for the past 4 weeks while they were all away on holidays, but there is zero chance my ex wasn't aware this was happening. Definitely turpentine. 100% pure gum turpentine, my boy said the bottle read. The distilled stuff, he said. They even started singing that Mary Poppins song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the turpentine go down." Feel like I'm in an alternate timeline. Thank you everyone for being so helpful. I appreciate it so much. Talk screen won't be happening until we get a referral. Poisons Hotline has no literature on hand for chronic exposure to turpentine, let alone in children, but the kids don't seem symptomatic. We will be visiting either a GP or the hospital first thing tomorrow for a full checkup, and a report will be made separately to that of the medical mandatory report. I don't really see a scenario playing out where CPS isn't getting involved here, and I can't not have my kids medically assessed knowing that this has been going on. Currently preparing for the shitstorm that's bound to ensue. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "Sorry, but you found out your ex-wife is poisoning your kids, and your response is to get on Reddit instead of taking your kids to the hospital and contacting authorities. Hopefully, this is as fake as it seems." The original poster replied, "Ex-wife. The kids seemed asymptomatic. Had I not been made aware of this, I probably would never have known anything was up. That being said, my mother is a nurse, and we did have the kids looked at. Yes, I came to Reddit as one source among several for guidance because I had no clue what to do about this, or even what my options were. I try not to act rash or emotionally impulsive when it comes to my children. I try to weigh up my options. My father has a muddy history, so even though he's not the same person he was 15 years ago, a CPS investigation has the potential to forcefully alienate my children from their grandparents. That's just one example of what factors into this. I wish this were fake." Another commenter then said, "What the frick? Asymptomatic? Dude, they've told you she's poisoning them. You should have immediately taken them to the hospital, regardless of whether you can see symptoms. I don't care if your mom is a nurse. She can't run tests by looking at them. Anyway, I still am not convinced this is real. But if it is, what you just said about your dad makes this all more confusing and sketchy. Take your kids to the hospital and seek legal help." The original poster responded, "We spoke to the hospital man. We called ahead. There was literally nothing they were prepared to do for us other than what we had already done. They wouldn't run tests unless the kids were exhibiting symptoms or they had a referral. even after telling them what was going on. The nurse was very apologetic, but it is what it is. Best they could offer was a place 2 hours away that wouldn't open until tomorrow anyway. I know what you're saying, but it just isn't that simple. And yeah, I understand that seems sketchy. I guess it kind of is. There is no legal help I could possibly get on a Sunday evening, and no way we could move things forward without rushing into it. We are going through everything tomorrow, properly and thoughtfully. Then another commenter said, Jesus Christ, record some evidence, send it to the cops, and have your ex imprisoned for child endangerment at the very least. This type of potato is going to start feeding them freaking bleach or urine sooner than later. Not even joking. She is a dangerous level of stupid that your kids should not be forced to suffer. It is your responsibility to take action to protect them from her. The original poster replied, Unfortunately, the only evidence I have is a secondhand verbal account of the testimony of a 7-year-old boy. He told my mother, his grandmother, who is a career nurse, who promptly told me what was going on. She's 50 shades deep into crazy conspiracy theories herself, and even she was mortified upon hearing this. My ex won't say or admit to anything, and I don't trust her to be honest if her custody arrangement is on the line. It's all just conjecture at this point. The commenter suggested, hire a private eye. Get evidence. It's your responsibility as a parent to protect your children. You can't be so passive. Do something. The original poster responded, I agree, it is my responsibility. I have zero intention of being passive about this. I just see my current options hitting a lot of dead ends. That's why I've come here. If I'm going to go the legal route, I want to move it through clean, calculated, no room for error. He said, she said, BS won't even get me a seat in the courtroom. Private investigator could be something worth following up, though. Thank you. Another commenter added, those poor kids, good idea picking this idiot to mate with. The original poster replied, yeah, look, I've got no good defense for that. Changed a lot after she got her ring, though. There's a reason I'm not still with her. Now for the next post. Just found out my ex-wife has been feeding my kids turpentine. So I just found out through my kids that my ex-wife has been feeding them turpentine mixed with sugar or honey as a way to worm them, and also been using it topically to treat mosquito bites. They are male 7 and female 5. Reading up on what it does if you ingest it, because who the hell would ever think it's a good idea to drink paint thinner as medicine? It can be devastating, and it really doesn't take a whole lot to mess you up, especially if you're a child. Think, 1 tablespoon could potentially be enough to change your life. Kinda messed up. I don't think talking to the ex is going to yield any results, and realistically, I don't even expect her to be honest about it anyway. My only evidence so far is the secondhand account of the testimony of a 7-year-old boy. He told my mom, his grandma, and she went and told me. Do I have any legal options here? Should I be collecting evidence? And if so, what kind? I honestly don't know what to do. I can't have my kids being fed literal poison. And to top it off, they were saying, yeah, the government tells us it's poison, but it's actually good for you. This isn't the first time they've come out with little nuggets of conspiracy-soaked wisdom like this. Tap water makes you docile and obedient sort of stuff. But this one is truly terrifying. They were meant to go back to their mother today, but I've got them in my care until next weekend due to an undisclosed emergency that my ex sprung on me about an hour ago. Never mind that I'm starting a new job tomorrow and wasn't prepared in any way to look after them for a week with no notice. But please, if anyone here can give me a few tips or pointers, I would be so grateful. I'm stressing pretty bad about this. I don't know what to do. I'm located in Victoria, Australia, if that makes any difference to the situation. Now, for a related post. So for the last 4 or so weeks, my kids, a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl, have been ingesting a spoonful of turpentine every day and using it topically to treat mosquito bites. 100% gum turpentine, my boy said the bottle read. Paint thinner, I've questioned them about it, and I have zero doubt this was happening. Now I've wanted to book in for a tox screen and blood work, but would have to travel 2 hours to get it done. The only other option being police and CPS, both unfavorable options, or seeing a GP. What am I in for here? What damage would chronic ingestion of turpentine cause a 7-year-old or 5-year-old child? What are the things I should look out for? Would terps even show up in a screen in such a small volume? And if there's anyone here from Victoria, Australia, would a GP be able to help initiate a tox screen? Now for a comment deemed relevant. I'm sorry to hear of this happening. Usually, we wouldn't allow medical advice requests, but this is an exception. Turpentine has been touted as an alternative medicine cure-all, as has been amplified by disinformation on the internet. Please seek immediate medical assistance from a trained healthcare professional and take any discussions surrounding medical advice on here with an enormous pinch of salt. That said, this subject is very important to discuss and could help others who may have come across similar cases. Then OP replied, "My apologies. I will admit I didn't carefully look through the rules of this sub before posting. I did stumble across this particular school of thought this evening, unfortunately, whilst researching the effects of turpentine ingestion. It saddens me to learn of its existence, but honestly, I'm not as surprised nor shocked as I feel I should be. Understandably, advice from strangers on the internet will never be a credible substitute for a trained professional opinion, but I do appreciate your concern and the willingness of those who helped. Thank you." Now for an update. The kids have been medically assessed, they've had blood work done, testing for liver and kidney function, as well as any other abnormalities, and have undergone some minor testing. Thankfully, everything has come back clear, and they seem to be happy and in good health, apart from my daughter being a little upset about being jabbed with needles. There were, however, some very concerning statements made by my kids to the doctors who screened them, both with and without any family present. Everything said has been transcribed and documented in their discharge papers. CPS has since been informed of the situation. The situation has been reported to the police, and a medical release statement has been filed with them. They told me they would remain in contact with CPS and wait for their lead. The kids are legally staying within the care of myself and my family until further notice from Child Services. At this point in time, I've had no contact with my ex since this all came about. I have a tip on a great family law legal representative whom I will contact in the very near future to discuss my steps moving forward and about making a claim for primary custodial care. My family fully supports this decision, and we are all still incredibly shocked about this whole scenario. I am on the verge of having an absolute meltdown, but things actually seem okay for now. My kids are safe. I couldn't be more grateful for how supportive my family and friends have been over the last couple of days. Thank you to everyone who gave me their advice and support. I appreciate every one of you. Please do not feed your children turpentine. Now, for a comment 2 years later, you DJ Heat. I can pretty much guarantee that if you're buying bottles labeled 100% pure gum spirits or whatever, they look like this rather than this, and the warning label basically comes with a wink and a nod for free. Then OP replied, "Actually looked like this. Literally has poison impressed down the side of the plastic bottle, complete with all the expected warning labels, straight from the paint section at Bunnings." Now for a final update. Just an update on things since everything went down and maybe provide a little clarity on a few key details. Not that it's necessary to me that you believe my story, Reddit being what it is and all. But bear with me, as I haven't really spoken about the topic with anyone outside of my partner in a very, very long time. There will be a few additional details that won't be mentioned for discretionary reasons and active actions currently in place. I'll start by stating that the kids have been in my full care since that first post and are very happy and healthy. The mother has placed the entirety of blame on the grandmother and remains steadfast in that stance to this very day. The month prior to my post, they spent camping as a family. The kids and their mom's immediate family. They spent that entire time in her care, and there is no way she wasn't privy to what was happening every goddamn day. The kids had a song to sing about it, all substantiated in statements taken from them. So as a few have speculated, yes, this happened in regional Victoria, a couple of hours from Melbourne. The hospital here could have taken the kids in for screening through ER, but they didn't have the facilities to actually test the blood work on site. The turnaround for a result, I was told, would have been a few days, possibly longer, as it had to get sent off. Alternatively, I could just wait until the following day to make the trip to the nearest facility that was capable of producing same-day results. We took that option. The kids were triaged the following day through ER, tested for organ functionality, blood work came back clean, they were privately spoken to and assessed by on-site well-being officers or whatever their title, and CPS was contacted through the hospital and a case opened. Note, yes, we do call them child protection here, even though they operate under the DFFH banner, but so does community housing and disability support, in tangent with NDIS. So do with that information as you will. It's a broad department. We left with the medical reports, which included statements given by the children, and they were being fed some wild facts about the world. That night, I made an informal statement at the local police station stating what the situation was and the actions taken, just so they had it on record. For those tracking the chronology of all this, we are roughly 30 hours into the timeline from me first finding out. CPS conducted several interviews over the next month with all parties involved, as well as a house call to my residence. Not sure how extensively they interviewed the mom, they concluded the children unfit to be in the mother's care, but were comfortable in closing their case should they remain with me full-time. Surprisingly, there was no legal order put in place. Apparently, they are happy to move on from a situation once comfortable with the results. I found a good law firm and started the legal process, which has been very slow due to a lack of cooperation. Essentially, though, we have restricted the mother's access to supervised visitation and removed her parental right as a legal actor regarding medical decisions. She has only seen them a handful of times in the 2 years following, despite constant efforts to facilitate visitation. The kids have had therapy, and I've spent many hours talking to them over the last 2 years, helping them navigate their way through this. They'll have a lot of questions they'll expect answers for when they're older, I'm sure. Currently, we have managed to secure scheduled visitation with the mother through a professional contact center, which facilitates supervised visits. It has been a wild ride, but we are incredibly lucky and happy to have the strong family unit we currently do, including my partner and her daughter, who have been next to us through most of this process. Please teach your kids it's safe to be honest and open with you. Am I the idiot for dumping my boyfriend after his friend treated me like dirt and he did nothing about it? I don't know if I'm being wildly unreasonable and jealous over this, so I need some outside opinions. I have been with my boyfriend for 3 years, and we share an apartment. He has a female friend, Nell, and they were friends for years before I came along. I had no issue with their closeness. I have male friends and knew I'd be a hypocrite to leap to judgments, but at this point, I feel I'm justified in thinking the way I do about her. The first time I met her, it was extremely obvious Nell didn't like me. She came into the bar all excited to see my boyfriend before noticing me. Her entire demeanor changed. She shook my hand and dug her nails into my skin before ignoring me the rest of the night. She even seemed upset at one point that I took the seat beside my boyfriend and quietly left halfway through the evening without saying goodbye. So it's safe to say my first impression of her wasn't good, but I tried to reason with myself that not everyone gets along, and I don't need to be friends with my boyfriend's friends. However, as time passed, it became really clear Nell's attitude towards me wasn't improving. She had a way of openly mocking me in front of groups of people, making side comments or loudly joking about my voice or appearance. My boyfriend would stand there and say nothing, and after the fact, when I asked him about it, he'd say he hadn't noticed. She'd also make a show of hugging him, hello and goodbye, and not me. She would mix that kind of stuff in with smiles and basic politeness, so it was tough to articulate exactly what she'd done. I felt very much like I was back in high school. From that point on, I basically decided I didn't need to have someone like that in my life, so just stopped going to things she was at. I haven't seen her in about a year. My boyfriend still sees her regularly, and they text often. I'm now at the stage where I fully believe they've either dated in the past or have something going on now. I've tried gently bringing this up, but he denies they ever dated and makes me feel like I'm being jealous and bitter by asking. I end up suppressing those feelings before something brings them up again. I've reached the end of my tether with it. The final straw for me came the other day when my boyfriend left his phone open and I saw a text exchange between the two. Nell had sent him a heart emoji, and my boyfriend had written something about how he was thinking of her. I know I should have said something then and there, but I felt numb and decided to go to bed. I'm trying to work out how to handle this. Is it possible nothing's going on here? It's something I've tried arguing in my head, but then something else pops up that makes me doubt it. Maybe friends do just send hearts, and I'm making this up because I don't care for Nell. I don't want that to be the case. I'm basically at a point where I feel he either has to tell me the truth and restrict contact with Nell, or else I don't feel like I can maintain the relationship. I feel constantly disrespected, and I want something to change, but don't know how to go about it. Any advice would be so welcomed. Now for the update. First, I'd like to sincerely thank everyone for the kind comments. I didn't expect so many responses, and I appreciate them all. I wanted to provide everyone with an update because a lot has happened. A few days ago, after a lot of tearful soul-searching, I decided the best thing for me would be to walk away from the relationship. I sat my boyfriend down and talked to him about it. I explained that I always felt like the third wheel in my own relationship, and that for my own happiness, I didn't want to be in a relationship that made me feel that way anymore. I gave examples to him that I did in my original post, such as his lack of boundaries with Nell, and his disinterest in standing up for me whenever she mocked me. I also said my trust in him had been eroded to the point where I felt unsure of what I really was to him. I told him I still cared about him and wanted him to be happy, but that I wanted to be happy too. My boyfriend sat silently for a while before asking, "So, you're jealous of Nell?" I felt like he'd barely processed anything I just said. And when I tried clarifying, he got defensive and told me he was allowed female friends. I could tell he wanted to turn it into an argument. And since my mind was already made up and I'd said what I wanted, I ended the conversation, and he played a computer game and acted like I wasn't there as I packed my things and left. I've been staying with my best friend, who is amazing and always so supportive. We're actually looking into sharing a place officially. I burst into tears on her doorstep, and we hugged it out before having a movie night with a pizza and some wine. It felt really therapeutic, like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. My family have been amazing too, rallying around and taking me out for little meals and stuff. I even got 1 or 2 sweet messages from my boyfriend's friends saying they were sorry and that they fully understood my point of view, which is interesting. I imagined that would be the end of it. But the next morning, I woke up to messages from a number I didn't know. It was Nell. I honestly didn't think she'd contact me, so to see walls and walls of text in my inbox was a shock. Let me run down some of the things she said. She repeatedly insisted that she never bullied me and said she had no idea where that came from. She said I'd always seemed cold towards her, so tried to make little jokes to break the ice. Openly mocking someone is an interesting method, but I digress. Lastly, she told me I was making things up by suggesting she ever had a thing with my ex. They were just friends. She finished with a passive-aggressive apology that I'd ruined my own relationship by being jealous and listening to voices in my head. I didn't respond to her venom or try to get the last word. I know she wanted to repeat her tried and true method of hitting out at me and enjoying my reaction, so I didn't give her one. I've been focusing on other things to start building my self-esteem and happiness back. My ex has not tried to contact me since I left, and I'm glad. Frankly, I think him and Nell are perfect for each other. I'm well and truly done with this, and I'm so excited for new things in my life. My friend and I are making arrangements to officially have a place together, and I actually got promoted at work today. I feel like it was a little hug from the universe. In all, things are looking bright. So, to end things, I want to thank everyone again for the messages. I think hearing your opinions, as well as getting all my thoughts out in a post, are what really opened my eyes and allowed me to leave. I finally feel I'm making myself the priority. Feels pretty great. Am I the idiot for walking away from my cheating boyfriend and taking our dog? I've been with my boyfriend John for 5 years. We have a pretty awesome relationship. Great communication, fun, easygoing, with good chemistry. We've always talked about getting married, and I have no doubts that we would be getting engaged very soon. Recently, John, myself, John's closest friend, and his girlfriend went on a trip to Vegas for several days. We had a great time, all 4 of us, and on our last night there, John told us he wanted to go to the Bellagio fountains to see them before we had to leave. Everyone was up for it. We went for a nice dinner beforehand, and then began watching the fountains, and the music came on. It was really romantic, and I was really enjoying myself. And that's when John grabbed my wrist. He turned me toward him, and I saw that he was sweating profusely. Like his face was bright red, and he looked like he was about to pass out from trembling so hard. The whole time, it looked like he was about to say something, but he never did. He just informed all of us that he wasn't feeling well and wanted to go back to the hotel. Our friends looked really puzzled and were whispering into each other's ears all the way back to the hotel. I kept asking John if he was okay, and he just said he probably had too much to drink. We've been back for a couple of weeks, and he's been acting really distant and cold. I honestly knew something weird was up that night in Vegas, so I called up John's friend's girlfriend, who I'm fairly close to, and asked her if she knew what was going on with John, since he had been at their place a lot this past week instead of coming home. Eventually, she spilled the beans and told me he had plans of proposing to me that night at the fountains, but then didn't. That's why the 2 of them had been acting so confused. I kept grilling her, and she also told me that John had told his friend that it didn't feel right. She made me promise not to tell John that I knew because she didn't want anyone to be upset with her. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. We live together, and he has been spending all of his time at his friend's house or at his parents' place since we got back. He barely calls me or responds to my texts anymore. I don't know what happened that night, but I feel like he's about to end things. I want to talk to him, but I don't know how to approach the issue. Do I just say, "Hey, I heard you were going to pop the question the other night, but changed your mind. What gives?" Was he really nervous? I'm freaking out. Now for the update. Hello, everyone. I apologize for not updating sooner, but a lot has happened. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who posted comments and to those who tried to reassure me. So John came home last night around 11:30 as I was watching TV in our bedroom. He came in and looked like absolute shoot. His eyes looked tired and baggy, and he smelled like beer. He apologized to me for the way he had been acting recently and told me he knew that I knew about the almost proposal, as he had talked to his friend Mike, and he told John that his girlfriend Tara had told me everything. He basically said to me that he had the whole thing planned out. He was going to propose, and Tara and Mike would take pictures. Then we would go back to a romantic, more expensive room in our hotel, which Mike and Tara had to end up staying in that night so as to make sure I wasn't aware of the fact that John was supposed to propose. They switched key cards while I was walking back. He then told me what I was afraid of. It just didn't feel right. I was looking at you, and it just wasn't what I wanted. Ouch. He told me that he had been nervous ever since he bought the ring, but that he thought it would go away once he actually proposed. In the moment, he said he knew that it was not what he wanted and thought it would be better to not ask me to marry him because he knew it wasn't what he'd want in the long run. So at this point, I'm in hysterics, as I pretty much know that this is the end of the relationship. I tried to be calm and rational about it, but there was one point where I was crying so hard that I literally got down on my knees, put my head in his lap while he sat on the couch, and just kept incoherently saying please in between sobs. Not my proudest moment, but at that moment, this man was my best friend, the future father of my children. I just never, ever in a million years pictured our relationship coming to this point. He ended it with me last night because it didn't feel right, and that's all he could say to me, over and over. It just doesn't feel right anymore. I can't see myself with you. At that point, I could barely breathe. Feels like I'm having a panic attack. So I call my mom and she comes to pick me up from our place. My poor mom, she just looked so helpless. While I sat there in the car crying so hard, I eventually got a nosebleed. So I wish I could say this is the end of the story. But more has happened since last night. This morning, I'm on Facebook looking through a bunch of old pictures of John and me, sobbing uncontrollably and sending him text after text with reasons why we should be together. And I eventually stumble onto Mike's page through a tagged photo. He updated his status from a few hours ago to something along the lines of, "California was amazing. Wish work would send me for more than 5 days." My stomach started doing flips because John kept telling me he was spending the days he was practically ignoring me with Mike. But Mike was in California for several days and we're in Canada, so not very close. I freaked. I called Mike from my house phone, and when he answered, I said, "Hey, it's acetylsalicylic acid," and all he could say after a few seconds of silence was, "Fuck." Basically, Mike's been covering for John's butt, while John is spending time with the girl he's been apparently freaking for the past 6 months. I know this girl. John works with her, and she's always been really sweet to me whenever I've seen her at John's work-related events. Mike told me that John had told him he was falling in love with her. He said this after the incident in Vegas. He's been spending almost all of the past 2 weeks with her. Mike then told me he had promised not to say a word to anyone, not even Tara, but he felt guilty and was glad I called him. He apologized and said if I had to tell John that he told me, I could. That's all I know for now. I haven't bothered contacting John yet, and I don't know if Mike told him that I know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been throwing up all day. I took one of my mom's Ativens, and am feeling a bit calmer right now. But whenever I think about it, which is practically all that consumes my thoughts, I feel disgusted, humiliated, and devastated. It actually feels like my heart is breaking in two and I have no control. I need to get my stuff from our place. I need to find a new place. We have a dog. Who gets the dog? I love my dog. It all feels so surreal. Now for an update. John called me a bunch of times while I was in an RX-induced/depression coma. I woke up as he was calling me again and kind of just answered the phone without thinking about it. He was crying and apologizing. I guess Mike told him that I knew and saying he was confused. He asked me where I was and I lied and said I was with my sister an hour away from here at her place. I asked him if he was with her. He said yes, but that he'd be home tomorrow. So could I please meet him to talk about things at our house? I said sure. I asked my mom to drive me to our place a little while ago and I kidnapped my dog, brought her back, and I'm feeling much, much better. I'm also not meeting with him tomorrow. You guys, I didn't think it would help this much to ask you guys for advice, but I've read each and every one of your comments, and dear God, I feel 1000x better than I did a few hours ago. Thank you. Like, I feel so different. It's weird.